Welcome to the Neural Implant Podcast, where we talk with the people behind the current events and breakthroughs in brain implants in an understandable way, helping bring together various fields involved in neuroprosthetics. Here is your host, Laden Yurachek.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Neural Implant Podcast. Today's guest is Ben Woodington from Coherence Neuro, which was formerly OptoBio. And we were just joking before we started recording that this is part of the name. It's almost like the artist formerly known as Prince. You have to say it. But they have a very interesting implantable neurotechnology that reduces cancer. What? It cures cancer? That's crazy. I didn't know that neurotechnology could do that. So Ben, do you want to introduce yourself better than I just did? And did I just completely butcher what you guys are doing, or is there actually a sense of truth to this?
No, that's absolutely right. First of all, it's an absolute pleasure to be chatting with you here. You're right. We're a builder of neurotechnologies, implantable neurotechnologies for cancer treatment and cancer monitoring. And we like to say that we're trying to develop technologies that can cure cancer from within. A bit about me, my background is in neurotech as well. So I've gone full stack. I used to work in drug delivery devices. Then I worked on my PhD at the University of Cambridge under George Meliaris, where I was working on neurotechnologies for spinal cord injury. There we were really trying to develop tiny little technologies that we could wrap around the spinal cord and measure electrical information that's traveling up and down, and of course look for electrical stimulation in rehabilitation. I met my co-founder there, Elise Jenkins. She was working in the field of neural oncology, looking at how electric fields can be used to disrupt tumor growth, cancer cell division, but also how we can look at the electrical action of cancer and the supporting neurons and use that to prognose, to understand how cancer is evolving and growing. So about 2.5 years ago, we merged our world and set ourselves on a path of creating neurotechnologies to track and treat cancers.
And so is that what OptoBio was doing as well? What's that transition look like? What was that company?
Absolutely. OptoBio, Coherence is a continuation of OptoBio. The company, when we founded it, we named it OptoBio Systems. And Opto was really a hangover name through some of our initial tech concepts where we were looking at light-based technologies. So we were looking at transmitting data out using light, powering devices using light to miniaturize them. Quite frankly, I suppose we've moved beyond that. We're very much like a product and patient-focused company, and it didn't seem right to have a name that was attached to a technology. But the other part of that is we're not an optogenetics company, and optogenetics is a very exciting field. A lot of that is gaining a lot of attention, rightly. And I felt it was slightly confusing for people to think that we were an optogenetics company. We're not. So our new name is Coherence Neuro, which I think captures our mission a little bit better.
And we're recording this in an early July 2025. When did this change happen?
This change happened about a month ago.
Oh, wow. Okay. So when we met, that was quite recent, huh?
Very fresh. Absolutely.
Wow.
We were very recently the artist formerly known as Prince at that point.
Great. Okay, let's talk about this curing cancer. What kind of cancer? Is it all types of cancer? And what is the mechanism of action for this? And how well understood or proven is it too?
Yeah. So when we started this, we were really focused on glioma, brain cancers. We set out to create this product we'd call the BCI for brain cancer. We wanted to look at how we could track and monitor brain cancers and how we could treat brain cancers using electrical stimulation. Now, within brain cancer, there are several buckets, and it's a range of aggression in that disease. You have very high-grade gliomas that are very aggressive and unfortunately terminal diseases that people die very, very quickly. Then there are lower grade brain cancers that patients may live with for 7, maybe 10 or more years. Of course, we're interested in a whole range of these, but as a starting point, we want to focus on glioblastoma, an incredibly aggressive form of high-grade brain cancer, which has a life expectancy today of around 14 months. There's a few reasons we want to focus on that. Number one is the unmet need is incredibly high, right? The standard of care has not moved in 25 years, and patients are today given what's called the Stupp protocol, which is they always have surgery, they always have radiotherapy, and they always have chemotherapy, a drug called temozolomide. After that, they are really in trial territory. Some hospital sites, some doctors may have 1 or 2 more tricks up their sleeves. but not very many. And so those patients are really in a dangerous position at that point. And the other point is here, a lot of these patients are already having surgery, as I alluded to there. So between 70 and 80% of those patients are having some debulking, some resection to remove part of that tumor. This is a good opportunity to leave behind a neural implant that can have some therapeutic benefit rather than justifying a new and fresh surgery in these patients that, of course, you have to justify a hospital to pay for, an insurer to pay for, but also to the patient, right? People don't really want surgery at the best of times, and so we want to limit that as well. I will say that since we've got into this field, this area known as cancer neuroscience, how the nervous system is interacting with tumors and cancers themselves, has completely exploded, and we're now seeing the interaction between the nervous system and tumors emerging in so many different types of cancers. So we're seeing these connections happen in the lungs. We're seeing it happen in triple negative breast cancer, melanoma, pancreatic cancers, stomach cancers. The list goes on, and we're really excited about the application of bidirectional neural interfaces in the treatment and tracking of those other cancers as well.
Wow, yeah, treatment and tracking. Wow. So okay, so how does this what's the mechanism of action? Are you literally just electrocuting it? Do you smell like a barbecue smell afterward or what?
Yeah, so we're doing no ablation, which is what you'd allude to there. So we're looking at two mechanisms. So there are two very exciting things you can do here. You can either stimulate the cancer cells directly, and there's a company that's doing this non-invasively at the moment called Novocure. So they use a high-frequency stimulant from outside the head in glioblastoma patients, where they're actually electrostatically acting on cancer cells in the body, and they can inhibit the division of those cancer cells. So targeting highly proliferative cells in the brain, the only cells that should be highly proliferative will be cancer cells. The cells are not dividing rapidly in the brain. But what we're also quite interested in is actually stimulating the supporting neural architecture. Research from Michel Mongi's lab over in Stanford has shown that these tumor cells are forming direct synapses between existing neurons in the brain. These junctions, you're getting a sort of feed-forward mechanism. So neurons are firing, cancer cells are depolarizing, and then cancer cells are proliferating rapidly from that as well. Cancer cells are releasing new neurotrophic factors, new neurons are growing into that cancer, and you get this runaway effect of dividing. What that group showed is if you knock that out, if you block those neural junctions into the cancer, you actually stop the cancers from growing as well. And they've 10 years now of research on this showing that you can inhibit the formation of tumor on the optic nerve or deeper in the brain. So we have studies running at the moment looking at both implantable direct modulation of those cancer cells and also modulation of the supporting neural architecture as well to see how far can we optimize this. The Novocure device, when used continuously, can extend overall survival by about 9 months. From 14 months, that's incredibly significant. We want to go way further than this. We want to at least double overall survival of patients, optimize that electrical stimulation method.
Wow, so this prognosis is quite grim. This is something I remember from your presentation too, is like it's a 100% fatality rate, or like you will die within a few months. So yeah, there's not a lot of alternatives, and extending it for a few months is really good. And so does this have to be very localized to it's only preventing growth of these cancers close to the electrodes, or does it work throughout the whole brain, or how does that work?
Yeah, so we're implanting the devices during the resection, and the majority of brain tumors, when they recur, and they will always recur, they're recurring at the margin. So they're recurring close to where the original tumor is. Now, they are infiltrated through the tissue in the brain, but still, most of the recurrence of that aggressive tumor is occurring, again, at the margin. And so that's what you're really trying to inhibit. You're really trying to inhibit the spontaneous reoccurrence of that tumor there. And this comes back into why we're interested in this monitoring aspect as well, because at the moment, a lot of surgeons are really flying blind, or neurologists or neuro-oncologists are really flying blind. They're relying on a MRI every 3 months to look at, okay, you've had your resection, what happens now? We know the tumor is going to come back at some point, but like, where is it going to come back? When is it going to come back? Is your current treatment working? Do we need to adjust your treatment? And what we've actually found in our studies is by looking at the electrophysiology of cancer and of that area, we can actually detect where that cancer will recur. We can classify cancerous versus non-cancerous tissue, and we think we'll be able to actually look at cues of aggression as well, how quickly the cancer is spreading in a certain area as well. This is pretty exciting in glioblastoma, where there's this massive problem of pseudoprogression, where an MRI is carried out. You see some change in the brain. Is that tumor, or is it swelling? Is it edema? Is it some fluid buildup happening in that area? With an electrical recording, you will actually be able to tell with certainty what that is. It becomes even more exciting in these lower grade cases where a lot of the clinical strategy is just wait and see and monitor and see what happens. And that sounds pretty good until you start to look at these MRI techniques and realize, they're relatively flawed, and they have incredibly poor temporal resolution, no real-time feedback on what is actually happening between treatment points.
Wow, yeah, that's pretty incredible. So this episode is sponsored by blackswan-ip, a boutique law firm specializing in intellectual property for neurotech and medtech startups, founded by Eugene Daneshvar, who holds both a JD and PhD in biomedical engineering. blackswan-ip helps innovators secure patents, develop smart IP strategies, and even navigate funding. Whether you're an early-stage startup or scaling your medtech venture, they'll work with you using flat-fee pricing and deep technical expertise. Learn more at blackswan-ip.com. For a lot of neural implants, self-diagnostics, you do something like impedance measurements and you measure the resistance of the electrodes. Are you guys doing something similar, or is it, I mean, it's probably like a proprietary signal, but I guess high level, what are you guys doing to be able to measure this?
Yeah, we're not looking at impedance, we're actually looking at electrophysiology. So we're measuring the same electrical activity that another BCI company would be if they were looking at, for example, a motor part of the brain or a speech area of the brain. So the way that motor intent is decoded in the brain by looking at patterns of local field potentials or spikes. We're doing the exact same in cancer. And what we find is there are pretty dominant frequency shifts when cancer is present, when it's not. And this has been proven now acutely in human beings, and from our own research, chronically in multiple mice models as well, where we have had devices over 3 or 4 months monitoring rodent patients.
Yeah, it's almost like you're listening to the neurons and seeing if they're coughing or sneezing or something like that, and if so, then you might be like, okay, so what level of development are you guys at, and what's the next few years of progress look like for you guys?
Yeah, so we've developed one. We are going first in human with that technology in November of this year. So that'll be the first time that technology comes in contact with a human brain, and that'll be a glioma patient. And we're working with a hospital in Australia to do this. But as soon as we do that, we want to move as quickly as we can to our first long-term implants in brain cancer patients. This is a really dire need. The technology is there, and we just need to get into these clinical studies as quickly as we can. In the meantime, we're running a lot of therapeutic studies in our own mouse models, looking both at how we can optimize therapeutic efficacy in glioma, various glioma models, ranging from super aggressive adult gliomas and pediatric gliomas to lower grade, slower growing tumors, and also building that pipeline out. So how can we apply these technologies, these bidirectional neural technologies, to other forms of cancer as well? So we have a really exciting study that's being run at the moment in pancreatic cancer, where we're doing electrical stimulation to look at tumor shrinkage in a model of adult pancreatic cancer called PDAC. And the results of that have been incredibly promising. We're not quite ready to announce them yet, but we're very encouraged and excited about the tumor shrinkage we were getting in that model as well.
Wow, yeah, that'd be exciting if that pans out. A lot more treatments with neurotechnology. So how does the person-human and basically patient approvals work? And obviously, there's a high bar to be able to implant something into a patient, but if it's a terminal patient, that does change things. Does it change things? I mean, do the regulatory bodies then say, oh, sorry, the patient's going to die anyways, so might as well have at it, he's a guinea pig or something like that? Or is the approval the same, or what's that look like?
Yeah, so the first thing to say is we are held to the same high bar that everyone else would be in terms of safety. So yes, these patients are incredibly sick, and we want to do everything we can to help them. But in terms of the safety profile of the device, we still have to be held to the same requirements, and that's the most important thing for us. In terms of the patient buy-in, let's say, we've had overwhelming response from both patients and clinicians who just want to help move this forward as quickly as they can. So even in these first in human studies, where the initial patients are not going to have therapeutic benefit from a short-term stimulation recording session. Even those patients are very excited about being involved in such a study. It'll accelerate the development of this product and move it towards a clinical product very quickly. There is, of course, the other point here that these patients are undergoing debulking surgeries for their tumors when we go in. So we're not taking patients on board who have previously had a surgery and then saying, can we do another surgery to do this acute? So these will be patients that are scheduled for a tumor resection, and we will work with the surgeons at that point to implant our devices. We'll carry out some safety studies and some recording studies, start mapping them, and then the patient will go on their way in their completely normal treatment protocols that they would have had anyway.
Yeah. Wow. And I'm working on a project too, and I sometimes feel a little bit of sense of urgency that like, oh, these people need help, and delays or waiting on grants and everything like this they seem frustrated by that. But I can't even imagine for you. I mean, what's your sense of urgency if you're waiting 9 months for a grant and you've talked to a patient or something like this, and that's their prognosis or that's their life expectancy or something like this? How are you managing that?
Yeah, I can't even begin to explain how palpable the level of urgency is internally here. Everyone is moving so quickly and literally and metaphorically sweating as they do it to get things moving. I really like to spend time with cancer patients, with clinicians as well, but a lot of time with cancer patients as well, which I think a lot of people don't do enough of. And really get their perspective. And their perspective is hurry the hell up. Like, we need new treatments. We need new options, and there really is nothing. And like, they are just desperately calling out for new approaches, outside thinking. And so are the clinicians, to be honest. The clinicians are like, please think outside the box, try new things. We need new approaches. I make sure that our team interact with those patients and those clinicians so that they get the same messaging, right? What we're doing is important and it is urgent, and we need to move as fast as we can to help these people.
Wow. Yeah. No, hopefully that happens. What does the next 5 years look like for you guys?
So after this first in human study, we will be very much moving as quickly as we can to our long-term studies, our first clinical studies. These will be moving in parallel in the US and also in Australia. We need to hit that first, what's called a pilot study, early feasibility study, as quickly as we can, and we're aiming for 2027 for those studies. We're going to be building out more of our team in California. So if there are smart, high agency and high urgency product developers, system developers, and electrical engineers in the Bay Area or willing to relocate to the Bay Area, we're going to be hiring out there very soon. We've got a lot to do, and we need as much help from smart people as we can possibly get. But really, right now, we're focused on getting that first product, SOMA 1, to those clinical studies. We will continue to build out the pipeline as well. We have a in vivo test facility in Palo Alto that we are working in to just build out as much as we can in terms of the application of this technology in other disease areas as well. So we're running a lot of studies at the moment to prove that out.
Yeah. Wow. This is really compelling. And your presentation at the Active Implantable Medical Device workshop in Barcelona was really good. And obviously that urgency is very palpable. And there's not really too many alternatives or bright spots for these patients. Ben, I support what you're doing. And is there anything that you need, or what would you want to see from the neural implant community?
I think I'm so excited and encouraged by the work that's going on in the neural implant community generally at the moment. We've obviously seen huge strides in companies that are developing BCI technologies for motor issues, paralysis, which is incredible. And of course, the engineering that's gone on, a rising tide floats all ships, as they say. But I think the other thing I'm super excited by is we're now starting to see the second phase of these technologies. Every major BCI company you speak with say, yeah, sure, we're interested in paralysis, we're interested in ALS, but then we want to go into disease modification. We want to go into therapeutic BCI. We want to treat all of these diseases for the millions or billions of people around the world that suffer from these diseases, from depression and psychiatric diseases to stroke and traumatic brain injuries. And I think now we're starting to see that. We're starting to see companies pop up around the world that are taking the lessons from neuroengineering and applying them and those devices to illnesses that we just do not have good tools to treat right now, good devices, good drugs to treat right now. And for us, we think that's oncology. Like, we think there's just a huge opportunity for these technologies to move the needle in oncology. But I would say we're seeing that in so many other exciting areas of medicine as well. What I'm very excited about seeing over the next few years, once we go into clinic and then beyond into commercial as well, is the integration of these recording technologies with stimulating technologies. There was this wonderful paper published recently in Nature, I think, which was talking to the convergence of BCI and neuromodulation technologies. Neuromodulation technology is typically very good for stimulating in certain disease areas, but don't have much sensing recording functionality. BCI technology is very good at sensing and mapping the brain, but don't do much in the way of therapeutic stimulation. We're starting to see the convergence of these, where we're going to have very, very powerful therapeutics that have this very compelling companion diagnostic capability as well. And I want more people to be thinking about how these technologies should be integrated into the wider healthcare system, because currently it's a bit of, maybe we're going to have these incredible new diagnostics for tracking mental health burden or cancer burden or stroke recovery, and how these technologies will be managed by clinicians, paid for by insurers, and interacted with by patients. I think probably needs more thought, because it's going to be an incredibly exciting, and probably for the first time in our life that we'll have this kind of data. We need to figure out how to manage it appropriately and make sure that patients have the biggest impact from it.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good approach too, is almost this piggyback method. What you're doing, oh, you're already doing a surgery. We're already sticking our hands inside of you, cutting you open and removing something. Let's leave something behind, biocompatible, and it'll monitor kind of what you were saying. We don't have to do MRI, and it'll monitor you continuously, and then it'll send us an alert when something is growing back or doesn't look good or something like this. So yeah, that is a very, I guess, underexplored area of both BCI and neurotechnology that I'm glad this is happening, because we tried to just beat down the front door all the time, but maybe we have to jump in through a window or the back door or something like that. And maybe that's the better way to approach this, and maybe more realistic with anatomy and everything like this too. And then obviously patient preferences. We don't want, again, to be doing exploratory brain surgery for no reason.
Oh, absolutely. And again, you have to think about the kind of expected value for the patient as number one, and the safety profile for the patient number one. And I think you want these technologies to be as frictionless as possible. And by that, I don't even necessarily mean like implanted or non-implanted. I just mean that we want these technologies to not deviate patients from living a high quality of life as much as possible. And in an Novacure and opportunity case, that's shaving your head all the time, and like having a carer having to come around with you and align transducers. Or maybe that's a patient doesn't have surgery right now and you have to schedule them for a large, major brain surgery. But somewhere amongst all of that, there are these very low friction paths where you can integrate these technologies with human beings, not affect their quality of life, but massively benefit their health outcomes. And that's what we're trying to do with this first product.
Yeah, excellent. Ben, is there anything that we didn't talk about that you wanted to mention?
Probably so many things. Maybe we can have another conversation another day when we're a couple of years down the line in our first human patients. But I'm sure we'd have lots of interesting conversations about lots of interesting things.
Yeah, love it. Well, I look forward to that, and I look forward to your company's success.
Great. It's been nice chatting.
Hope you enjoyed the show and were able to learn something new, bringing together different fields in novel ways. Until next time on the Neural Implant Podcast.